So hello, I'm Olly Bray. I head up the commercial team here at RPC. I'd like to just share a few moments on data, in particular the new General Data Protection Regulation, which is being published now. The draft is being published and it's going to be in place by 2018. It pretty much fundamentally rewrites the way in which data processing happens across the EU, and you really need to start focusing now to get ready for when that change comes about. So what do you need to know about the new regulation? Well, firstly it expands territorial scope. So wherever you're based, if you are targeting or monitoring EU data subjects, or you're selling services or goods to those subjects, you will be caught by the regulation, wherever you're based, including, for example, in the States. The second aspect, which is the most scary aspect, is the level of fine that the regulators will be able to issue against you in the event of breach. So currently the UK's Information Commissioner can fine you up to £500,000. Under the new regulation, his ability to fine, as with any other EU regulator, goes up to 4% of global annual turnover or 20 million euros, whichever is the higher. Other areas to watch include the collecting of data consents. They now must be specific, unambiguous and freely given. So that also means looking at your data privacy notices to make sure that they are set out as cleanly and as transparently as possible. So what else the regulation brings into play are some big new concepts. For example, the right to erasure. That means the right of data subjects to be able to quickly and efficiently delete all their data from your systems. Equally, there's the concept of the right to data portability, so that you can transfer data from one controller to another easily for the data subject. And finally, privacy by design. That is the concept of building all your systems and tech so that it can cope with the requirements of the strict privacy regime that is on its way. So there are 5 things I think you should think about when considering this new regulation, things you should think about putting into place now, even though the actual regulation won't come into force until 2018. So for example, I would think about setting in place frameworks for accountability within your organization. What I mean by that is setting up training programs and other systems to ensure that the whole business is now complying with this much higher level of data regulation obligation that is coming your way. Secondly, I would prepare for data breaches. The most likely way in which you will be hit by a mega fine is through a data breach. And so in terms of having a data breach plan and having the whole business drilled into knowing what to do in the event of a data breach may make an enormous difference to the level of fine that you might be facing should that unfortunate event occur. Next, I'd start reviewing your supply contracts, or even when drafting supply contracts, to draft in higher data obligations. And what I mean there is to, for example, put in a new schedule of obligation which goes to your data requirements for those processing data on your behalf. So any supply contract should now include technical and organizational measures and obligations on your suppliers to comply. Also obligations on them to notify you of a breach should something go wrong. I think you should also review your data collection notices and your privacy policies to ensure that those are as drafted as cleanly and specifically as possible in order to meet the new standards that will be required when the new regulation comes into place. And finally, to wrap up, I'd say that the new regulation means that you need to completely change your mindset about data compliance. I say this because it impacts on pretty much every data touch point that you have in your business. So whenever you're collecting any kind of personal data, you need to be thinking about the new regulations and putting yourself in the best possible position for when that regulation lands in 2018.